Here on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. My name is Johnny Hughes. And this morning, a very simple conversation. It sounds simple if you want to look at it from the way it looks on the paper. But then if you look at it from people's perspectives and in their lives, you'll find that there's some piloloo going on with their finances in terms of the cost of living. And if you want to escalate it, you can talk about chaskele.
Now with me when I was 16 years old.
Cost of living.
Less than 15.
Shamale once said it gets so high, the rich and poor, they start to cry. Ghana politics is all about NDC and MPP these days. And the real bread and butter issues have been relegated to the background. In the midst of all of that, there's the psychological twist to the conversation. Surviving those hard times and how to stay afloat and not drown in depression. And also to make sure that you are encouraging others to come along with you. We'll look at the figures, we'll look at the statistics, and then we'll look at the economical twist. But let's start off from a psychological perspective so that we're well positioned for this. Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur is the chief servant at the psychology department, the UPSC clinic. He's also a medical doctor and the psychologist. He joins us on the phone line. Good morning, Doc. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, hello, good morning.
Doc, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Doc, so this answer, I am fine, is usually what you get from the average Ghanaian when you ask them how they are, even if they have nothing in their pockets, or even if their landlord is chasing them out, or even if they have not paid their water bill, electricity bill, and all of that. They just say, I am fine. I want to understand, where did it come from psychologically? Are we just built to be fine, irrespective of everything?
Well, there are two things. I think that generally people don't want to put their worst foot out there, because we have the inner tendency to try to want to protect ourselves, our image, and all that. And so when someone says I'm fine, it may just be the fact that they just want to put up their good, their good face. It doesn't mean that they are fine. Then again, too, generally we don't want to be seen as the problem.
Right.
And especially depending on who is asking, how are you, then the conversation will be different.
Right. I see. Interesting. Now, there's the continuous complaint by people, or especially out there. They say, look, we go to the market and food prices have risen. Our rent is going up, electricity, water, LPG, they are all gone up, school fees going up. But then our finances are literally the same. So our finances pale in the shadow of all these expenses that we have to make. And if we don't take care, as they say on the streets, depression will set in. How do you manage to stay and maintain a cool composure in the face of all these things? Guide us.
Okay, so it depends on what do you call it, the crisis the person is going through. So, for example, we have different forms of crisis. And every challenge that anybody goes through, it's a form of crisis. But for some people, their crisis may just be simple. So probably maybe just one financial problem to just fix food, or to fix school fees, or to fix a building. So for those simple kind of crises, it may be a bit easy to deal with. But the complex ones means that in addition to the finance, there is also some food problems. There is health problems. There is accommodation issues. There is whatever. So one person may have multiple crises surrounding the person. For someone like that, it may become very, very difficult to cope. And for some people, we call something secondary crisis. What it means is that you may not have been going through the crisis directly, but because you depend on whoever is going through the crisis, you are affected. So, for example, someone's father doesn't have money, and because of that, she cannot pay her fees. Or a father dies because of some form of crisis. Now she can't go to school. She cannot, pursue her dreams. So that becomes secondary crisis, right? And if you have someone going through multiple crises, then it becomes a bit more complex.
Right.
But our ability to deal with crisis starts before crisis.
Okay.
Your coping strategies and your resilience before crisis. So two people may go through the same crisis. One may seem not affected as much as the other person because they have built a certain resilience and a certain coping strategy against crisis of life. And usually from childhood, we develop our own resilience from childhood. So, for example, you meet someone who's grown on the street. You know, in future, when there are financial problems, they will not be affected as much as someone who grew from the palace. Right? So we all develop some coping strategies, even from childhood and from the life situations that we go through. So to deal with that, there are multiple areas. See, there are things that the individual has to do, and there are things that the professionals have to do, and there are things that is on the level of the community or society or the government to be able to help manage a particular crisis, especially around finance. So when it comes to the individuals, they would have to, first of all, grieve well. Grieve well means that when they ask you, how are you, don't say, I'm fine. You know, the more you express how you feel,
right,
the better you feel. So you need to grieve properly. You need to express yourself properly whenever you're going through crisis.
I see.
Then you need to think right. It's a bad day, not a bad life. You know, you had a relationship problem. All men are not the same. You know, so when people go through crisis, they are likely to have some, you know, negative perceptions about what they are going through and about life and about others. And that makes the crisis worse. So they have to think about the crisis in a positive way. Then again, they need to journey with the right people. What it means is that you need to be able to surround yourself with people who are more encouraging, people who will help you navigate through the crisis, than to focus on people who will discourage you or put you down and stuff like that. Unfortunately, when people are in crisis, they find people in the same crisis and they grieve together. Instead of finding people who encourage them and help them out of it, they are likely to congregate, you know, similar situations, congregate and talk about it and stuff like that with no way for it. So you need to journey with the right people. Then again, instead of focusing on the problems, you need to focus on the solution.
Okay.
Because the human being has the capacity to check out of crisis if they engage their creative ability. You see, so instead of focusing on, oh, I don't have money, what will I do? What you need to focus on is what next? What can I do to be able to come out of those crises? Then you realize that we all have this creative edge and ability to be able to, you know, navigate our way through the difficulties of life. So on the personal level, these are the things that can happen. But beyond the crisis, you realize that crisis creates all kinds of mental health problems, stress, anxiety, depression, and it will worsen, you know, already existing mental health problems, like issues like bipolar. People would have, schizophrenia, have some other mental health problems. Crisis itself may worsen those things. And that is when, if you realize you are drowning and you are struggling to cope, then the next level of management comes up, seeking professional care. And thankfully, in Ghana, policies around mental health care has gone very well over the years. So now you can walk into any hospital to seek the help of a mental health worker, a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a counselor, or a chaplain, or a mental health nurse, or someone who has been trained. So that is the next level on the terms of professional level. So when you see a professional, they are going to assess your situation, look at what the risks are, what the issues are. If you have some mental health issues, then they are going to institute all kinds of therapies to help you deal with the problem. But on the level of the community or the government or the nation, almost every mental health problem you can think about, it is worse in the statistics are very, very well. About 75% of some mental health problems can be found in a low socioeconomic environment. So poverty itself is a risk factor for mental health problems. And that is why if the economy of a country doesn't go too well, it has a ripple effect on not just other sectors of life, but on health and also on the mental health of people. So you may find sometimes close to about 75 2/3 of mental health issues happening around low socioeconomic areas. Because with that, what it means is that access to care will be poor. The issues itself will create some mental health issues like I've talked about. Access to, you know, professionals may also be very poor. Financing of things in terms of healthcare and mental health care would also not be there. You see, so the ripple effect goes, even up to the national level.
I'll further expand this point, but let's welcome Professor Lord Mensah. He is a financial economist with the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to our listeners.
Great. Prof, I'll come to you in a bit. So, Doc, let me come to you now again and then ask you, because you mentioned that, poverty could affect your mental health. The question that will stand at this point, given the fact that a lot of people feel impoverished, they do not have enough to be able to cater for themselves to get what they need. How long does it take for poverty to have that effect on your mental health?
Well, it doesn't have to take long. It depends on the issues, and it can be sudden. So, for example, you have a business, because of the economic situation in the country, you have to shut down the business. It doesn't have to take long. The moment the news comes, it begins. So people may start having all kinds of stresses, depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. It doesn't have to take long at all. But the cause of the development of the disease, we have all kinds of criteria for diagnosis. For example, depression, until after 2 weeks, you can't diagnose anybody with depression. So things like that. Some people with anxiety disorders, you have to wait for about 3 to 6 months. If it still continues, then you say the person has some anxiety problems. Some, you may have to wait for over a year to be able to say that this person has maybe addictive related problems or not. So the cause of, a disease itself, we have our own diagnostic criteria. But it starts when the thing starts. So if someone, for example, lost their father through suicide because of economic related problems, you don't have to wait for 2 weeks, 3 months, or 4 months for anything to develop.
Right.
It just begins.
I see.
And the impact is lifelong. And that is where the problem is. Sometimes when the crisis itself ends, the impact of the crisis outlives the crisis itself. So if someone, for example, because of financial situations, couldn't go to school, and now the financial situation ends, they will still have the impact of not able to go to school, which is lifelong, and it can even be generational.
That's correct. But Doc, again, so you depend on, let's say I depend on Helen whenever I'm in a fix, and then maybe foresee whenever I'm in an economic fix for them to assist me. Now they also find themselves in a fix. So where I'm running to for salvation, also is blocked. That level of me being in a depressed situation and they being in a depressed situation could be chaotic for the entire community, no?
Yes, it does. So the ripple effect, so for example, a school shuts down because of financial problems. All the kids who attend the school, they are likely not to go back to school. And again, a member of the family dies. Or, in Ghana, our complex family system. So sometimes you have just one person being the breadwinner and takes care of the whole family and the extended family, and the person for some reason loses their job or business is not going well. It affects everybody else, and all the other people and the others connected to them are also affected. So it's just like a network of problems that extends from a particular group of people because we are interdependent in many ways. Yeah.
Dr. Newman Arthur, we thank you very much indeed for your time. You're always a pleasure to listen to. Grateful.
Thank you very much.
Great. Prof, now let's talk figures. And we begin with the figures that are thrown at us as inflation coming down and things beginning to look good. Is that a reality from where you sit?
Well, thanks once again for the opportunity. You see, inflation numbers are coming down. I think for now we're looking at 23.5 or so as it came out yesterday. But let me tell you, there's something we call momentum, which is a build-up. Remember, we've had inflation of about 54% before. But that was somewhere 2022. And trust me, that build-up, right, is still lingering on prices on the market. So let's assume you have, an item that was selling for 100 cedis. I want to use 100, so we can appreciate the numbers.
Right.
And it turns up that inflation goes to 54%. That item it's no more 100 cedis, but it's now 154.
Okay.
Now, let's assume that inflation along the line dropped to 33%. Now, what is 33% of the 154? Let's divide it by 3, approximately. So we're looking at 51. Add it to the 154. So we're looking at 205 as we speak now. We've gone past the 100%. But meanwhile, when you add the 2 percentages, it's not up to 100%. But then the effect on price levels indicate that we've increased price at more than what? Twice. So that is looking at 100 is now 205. Double the price. So effectively, it tells you that, yes, inflation numbers are down, but then the effect on prices as we build up to that high level is still on the market. So an item that you're supposed to buy 100 cedis, it has doubled. Let's take, for instance, Kinky, right? Kinky, that was being sold around 2 cedis. Now you're getting it around 5 cedis.
That's right.
That is more than 100%. So effectively, the numbers that are being shared now, that we hear from World Bank. You see, when somebody talks about a number coming down, you have to ask of the reference point. So if you refer it to the 54.4 that we recorded at the peak, then you will say that there's an improvement. But then, forgetting that the impact of the 54, 33, 29, all the way coming down to the 23.5 that we are recording now, is still price increase.
92.7.
It's still price increase.
That's correct.
So effectively, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't say, it's just a number play. And if you ask me, I would tell you that the reduction in inflation does not have economic significance.
Doc, how do we juxtapose this against the everyday prices? For example, there's salary stagnation, wages aren't going up, they are not keeping pace with the inflation, and yet we're being told that we are turning the corner. The people complain, officialdom tells them literally to shut up because the figures have dropped. Now you are explaining to us that figures may drop, but if we do a comparative analysis of what was and what is, not comparing what used to be or what ought to be, then we may be getting the calculation wrong. Salary stagnation and inflation. Let's do the relations.
Of course, I mean, it makes sense that, every citizen or a worker will appreciate that his salary is indexed to inflation. If your salary is indexed to inflation, then of course the price risk is absorbed. In the end, when you receive your salary, you are sure what you buy, and you can keep, whatever you're supposed to buy at the same level. So if you consume, 5 grams of tomatoes every week, you can still buy the same 5 grams of tomatoes every week. 5 kilograms of tomatoes every week. So effectively, once you have salary, being increased alongside inflation in terms of percentages, then you appreciate. But the question is,
right,
on the public purse, right, with the nation's, inflows, can we cope with that? The last time I remember, government increased salaries by 15%. At that time, inflation was around, 33%. And that tells you that it's nothing to write about. And that is why if you relate, salaries to what people are able to achieve, then you'll be tempted to tie them to corruption, because you ask yourself, where are they getting the excess money from to put up all those, structures that they have? So effectively, salary inflation is a mismatch, no doubt about that. If you look at every economy, this economy in particular, I would tell you that if you relate salary to inflation, you will give up easily. There's nothing to write about.
Now, Prof, the average Ghanaian will complain about rent, complain about utility bills, water, electricity, complain about LPG, complain about transportation, and all of these things go to the core of cost of living. Do you also get a sense that the people may be complaining too much than appreciating the fact that government, for example, is trying to meet them halfway, so they also need to bite a bit of the bullet and meet the government halfway?
I don't think the people are complaining too much. The reason being that every citizen may want to have a life up to a certain standard. And if you look at the definition for cost of living, it's the amount of money you need to have a certain standard of living, certain standard of life. So we're talking about your food, the essentials. I mean, you must have them. At least your salary should be able to afford all these things.
Right.
But then a situation where your salary is not able to match up with your transportation, combined with food, combined with the things that you need on daily basis, it becomes a problem. And that is when you start getting complaints from, the people.
Do the people need to cut down on their expenses and also cut down their taste just to survive, because we are not in normal times, as the government has been telling us?
Yeah, that's very true, but it depends on the picture that the government paints on the economy. Unfortunately, the crisis that we find ourselves in is an election year. And the build-up of the crisis, we're getting into election year. So the true picture of this economy is not really being painted to the citizens. You see, the people will adjust their life when they get the true picture of the economy. As we speak now, you started, questioning me on government saying there's an improvement in the inflation numbers, and so life is better.
Right.
Trust me, life is not better when you reduce inflation from 54% to 23%. The reality is that when the people are feeding on the essentials, and the essentials is what makes you live. So, for instance, if you're a worker, you have to shuttle from Botiano to where I live, Botiano to how do they call it? Accra Central to work. You need to commute. And if transportation is going up, this is part of your daily living. And as a human being, you can also live without food. And if you are consuming 3 balls of kinky, and you are not the type that can easily cut down, because some people reducing their food intake can even cause a problem in terms of their health. So we just need the essentials to survive. And if cost of living is going up, it's not a matter of cutting. Because cost of living is just the essentials for you to survive, to live up to a certain standard. It's not luxury. You only cut luxury when life is not going on well. So, for instance, I drive, my car. I spend around 4,000 a month to shuttle from where I live to Lagos.
Right.
I mean, but every week I have to buy about 1,000 Ghana.
Right.
Now, because of the cost of living, I had to cut down the frequency of visiting, the Legon and Gimpa campus. So what I do is that in a week I go there twice. And if there's a meeting that I'm the one leading, I force the meeting into online.
Okay.
And of course, data is expensive. But if you compare, the data I'm supposed to buy to the fuel that I'm supposed to, put in my car and go to Lagos, I prefer going on online. So these are ways of cutting, and these are because the car is big and it's a luxury. So I have to find a way to cut down on those. But not food, not shelter, not clothing. These are things we may have to look at. So once we say the standard of living is high, it goes against food, clothing, and these are essentials that the people need. You only cut, luxury stuff in your life.
I see. Prof, there's you financial economists and you finance people, economics people, you tell us all to learn to save, to manage our resources. You tell us to invest and yada, yada, yada. If we are not getting what we want to eat today or what we have to eat today, how then do we save to invest and all of that against the future? Is that even possible? What is the reality on the ground?
Right. So normally when the cost of living goes up like that, it affects private investment, private savings. Because when you receive your salary, you split it into two. There's a consumption component. It's like a national, accounting.
Mm.
There's a consumption component of your salary, and
Right.
there is investment component.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
Now, if the cost of living goes up, it means that the consumption component is so high that it reduces the investment component, and to a point where you cannot get even anything to say. Okay.
Mm.
Then it means that you have to rely on pensions.
Okay.
Because your pensions is what will take you into the future.
Mm.
Apart from that, looking at what is happening, you see, now even the pensions, people have lost track in it. So when economies are in crisis, people may want to bring their future under their own control. That's what happens most of the time, and it's a rational thinking. There's no
Right.
way you can take it from the economic agents.
Mm-hmm.
Every time economies are not doing well, you see people, coiling in. You see them bringing their investment under their direct control.
That's
and
right.
That is why you see a lot of investment into treasury bills, because treasury bills is more or less a near money instrument, which at the end of the day, immediately there's jack, the person can easily have access to his money because there's liquidity on that space. Other than that, the person may want to keep, maybe something like estate that he manages on his own, or some farms or something that he manages on his own. So usually, when standard of living goes up, it affects savings. And you see, it's a cycle. Once savings goes down, it denies, money for long-term investment.
Right.
So you will come to realize that savings will go to the bank, and then the bank can also lend it to other people for them to also, work with it and then put food on their table. Now, beyond that, government can also borrow in the same savings, right? Because the banks also invest in treasury bills and all those that government issue, government bonds and all those. But once consumption takes over all this, it denies the state of infrastructure. So there was a point in time that we had similar situations, and when it happens like that, you will see that our external debt start going up, because the only place, and because we also yearn for infrastructure.
That's
it's
right.
An economy that we need roads, we need hospitals, you can name them. But at the end of the day, if all these things, if consumption is swallowing savings money, then it shows that within this economic space, you will not get money for long-term investment. So the government needs to go on the international market to go and borrow. So you will see that any point in time where you will see inflation going up, you will see interest rate structures going up, right? Government tends to increase its external debt, because that is where they can get long-term funds, and relatively, if you convert the dollars, cities, they will come to appreciate that they are borrowing relatively at a lower cost, depending on what they are coming to use the money for. So all these things are kind of a system that we may have to look at. So once consumption reduces, it tends to affect, even infrastructural development. Sorry, once consumption increases, takes over the entire, income among households, it tends to affect infrastructural
I see.
development.
Prof, so this piloloo that is happening, financial piloloo in the pockets of the Ghanaian worker and the Ghanaian citizen, how do we get out of this quagmire? What should the state do? What should the citizens do? We're looking for solutions now.
Right. So you hear people sometimes you get this question, and it's like, what is the immediate solution? What is the short-term solution?
Right.
When things happen like that, in times of crisis, one, you've decided to go to IMF. IMF money is not, money to rescue this economy, but to give you a temporary relief. And while you're getting this relief, you take up medium to long-term measures to ensure that you reform the economy. Now, looking into our budget for 2023, I didn't see any signal in terms of our prioritization when it comes to what the government has to spend on to reduce our import bill. Therefore, one way or the other, tend to, tame down the foreign exchange demand on our markets here. clearly, if you go into our import bill, rice, for instance, right, is the seventh, largest import item on our import bill, taking about $2 billion every year. And you ask yourself, what did we do in our last budget? Because when you grow rice, within a year, you can harvest twice with a very good irrigation, right? And within the fiscal year, we should be able to, even if it's once that we're supposed to harvest. And then maize, did we see any, serious emphasis in our budget to do that? I'm trying to put up the solution. So effectively, for the 3 years that we are collecting the IMF money that is giving us the temporary relief, we're supposed to see this one, expenditure direction, expenditure cut, prioritization, to ensure that there will be food on the table, because food is part of the essentials we are discussing now among households. So it's to ensure that at least there will be food on the table. You catalog all the countries around us that are recording single digits and, inflation below 20%. You come to understand that they have prioritized expenditure on food. And once you do that, transportation, you can't control it that much. The reason being that, for now, the spare parts that, are building up into prices, the fuel that is building up into transportation costs, you don't have control over them because you don't produce spare parts in Ghana. Neither do you, even if we produce fuel, we are net importers of fuel than, we export. So we are net importers. So effectively, it tells you that, yes, we have placed too much emphasis on the IMF inflows and then the ancillary support that we get from that, from World Bank, African Development Bank, and all those, international agencies. And you don't build your economy without production. Look at what we've done to the cocoa sector. Cocoa sector was giving us to a point sometimes around $2 billion, dollars. What money are we getting from, IMF? It's $3 billion for 3 years. So if annually one of your assets or one of your produce is able to give you $2 billion, even if it's a loan, you're able to pay as a result of the beans that are sold on the market, the global market. Why would you, look on for this asset to deteriorate to this level?
I see.
So, we are not doing the right thing. It's like we are sitting down and we're looking for quick fixes. And quick fixes that didn't solve economic problems.
I hear you.
If you want the IMF money, all those, money, they are all quick fixes. You get them instant. Eurobond money was a quick fix. Then while you are getting all this, what are you putting the money in to ensure that, we go, we turn around the economy?
That's the big question. Right. Prof, I thank you very much indeed for your time. And Helen has a question for you.
I did. Well, Prof, good morning to you. Commiserations on having to spend so much on fuel. I certainly feel your pain. I think you've answered most.
No, I didn't come to... Hello?
Yes, sir.
I shouldn't come to the studio anymore, right?
We didn't say that. We didn't say that.
I think most of the questions have been answered because I actually wanted to find out from you comparatively what other countries are doing, other countries that are in the same region as us.
You got the answer.
I did.
The answer is already there.
And then also very, very quickly though, in terms of the exchange rate fluctuations, because that's become quite topical, how have the exchange rate fluctuations impacted the inflation and the cost of living in Ghana? And then my last one is, what role do global economic conditions play in our current situation? Because we're often told by officialdom that Ghana is not an island and we need to look to the rest of the world.
See, when people compare Ghana to other countries, I get worried in a sense that...
Why is that?
Sometimes countries may have the resilience to absorb economic shocks. Let's look at our, import cover as one of the buffers we're supposed to have. Ours at the point in time was running around less than 1 month in terms of the dollar reserves that we have. Other countries are doing 6 months. Other countries are doing 1 year. Can you compare yourself to these countries? You can't.
Of course.
Now, talking about how, exchange rate fits into inflation. Of course, Ghana is, import-driven economy. Almost everything that you see is, is imported. At the end of the day, when something is not even imported, the feed within which, these items get to the market. So, for instance, plantain may not be imported, but plantain has to get to the market on wheels. And of course, the wheels must be fueled. What's the cost of fuel price? So the plantain seller price it on the what we call it, on the plantain price. So there's that kind of feed into the local market as well. So once your economy is structured in such a way that it's imported, you have this, you are exposed to these global shocks, especially when oil price, start going up, and then you have to import more than you export. So these are the problems, Ghana is facing. But you see, other countries are able to do well in this because they are able to, lay out their import bill and then get to know the essentials that they need that they can produce in-house.
Right.
If you identify that you can produce maize, you can produce rice, and then you reduce your rice importation by 80%, you reduce your maize importation by, let's say 100%, you know how much forex you can save.
92.7.
Prof, I
you
think
will save a lot of money, and at the end of the day, it will stabilize your currency.
But Prof, is that not why we've been what we've been trying to do with planting for food and jobs, one district, one factory, one village, one dam? We're trying to have some industrialization of a sort.
We may have to ask the president that he intends to roll out, that was a very good intention. Fantastic policy, no doubt about that. But then at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what were the targets? When he swore in the agric minister, did the president give the agric minister a target to say that, hey, my friend, by the time we finish our first term, I want to see import, bill of Ghana, import of rice, importation of rice in Ghana reduced by 80%. Did you hear that? So it was like a policy that has been rolled out, open policy without target, right? And once you have a policy without target, even measurability of performance become a problem. That is why the minister would say that I'm doing well, when he cannot even measure where he cannot even think about where he started from and where he's ended.
Professor Mensah, I thank you very much indeed for your time. Professor Lord Mensah is a financial economist with the University of Ghana. Well, we hit the streets.
I'm close to your studio now. Bye-bye.
You are close to the studio now, so traffic kept you. But
I tell you, okay then.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Prof, thank you very much indeed. We went on to the streets, well, in the markets, I should say, and some traders had something to share with us. Listen.
That way 50. Yeah, me 45. Maybe 20. Ukita 10 to benyebi. Ukita 20 benyebi. Ukita 50 benyebi. Ukita 100 benyebi.
Ma ekosro ebo ne kosro especially body no ene kokko no ti pesi ehu senia ebo ne ti first ne net sen ye na sesi a edu sen
Eniama no sese no o se ewiase no bibia no eba afiafe nti body eba afiafe menkani ba afe entosi ba afe jene ba afe bibia ba afiafe nti afe no ayese eba no sa afene so na se ebi mma asa ma ne bo no ayedin kakra na se body de obi ye water mo body ne ba eba August September no October ene no ebu bebre sa be ne de ya na June July ya na ne bo ayedin kakra enso eye ebi ba nti kakra kito sika nkwa be ne bia
bibi say no share ne bo ne say
say kwa na ne bo no e koso no ye wo 20 wo we draw we that way 50 yeah me be ma 45 e be 20 ukita 10 so do benya bi ukita 20 benya bi ukita 50 benya bi ukita 100
na bo de ne bo anya de na nsuo na ntontamti na bo de ne kontamti sese na bo de ne bo de sese mo kan enum 20 at the mile. And you 20 years, you have 1 and 9, 20 years, dear Baco. But dear Drons, a 500. A first and a 500, so nay 300. Says 500 and 800. But dear Drons, a permanent, everywhere 2 million, 1 million. 500 then.
80 the
Endra na ye 50 cedi. Mita we 50 cedi. Ya tumu ama me nti mi suma tumu 80 cedi. 20 cedi die no and then me daji 50 cedi. Enye me 1,500 na ma fa emu ase no ni nya me ye firi. And at 10 cedi die no eno na ndem me daji 20 cedi.
3FM.
And at 2 cedi die no me daji 5 cedi. 5 cedi die no me daji 10 cedi. Ene die sa na ebeba no. So buku ye na esu ekumu. Dada no na wakasa obeto ne sa da bi onu so be hu se obebo kan so obetum. Eti ya na eku ye ho. Na nko dada ni si wo na ya tum no. E so onton we nu na enfiri wo. Na se foforo no na ye de beba na ye hu se ne ye be. Na so da bi ya ti wa ti se ya tum ni de fi so onu so dada no.
3FM 92.7. Urban Lifestyle Radio Station.
So these are some traders. I mean, plantain, cassava, onion, and tomato sellers. And you just heard. She said, well, we went to the market. We used to buy this for 5 cedis. Now when we went to 7 cedis, it's 10 cedis now. Yeah. We used to buy this for 10 cedis. Now we went to 13 cedis. It's 15 cedis, 20 cedis now. And she made a statement that may be running through how people profit here. That look, because you are increasing the rates, we will also increase the rates. And this was just yesterday. Now, let's go back to 3 months ago. Or no, 3 weeks ago. I'll do 3 weeks first. 3 weeks ago. And Roland Walker was out in the market. Listen to the conversation.
So I'll be asking her how the market has been so far. She's a bit busy at the moment. Let me just get close as she serves a customer and very busy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Charlie, what better? It's been a while. How has trading been generally over the last 1 year? Because I think I haven't been here until over the last 1 year. So
long time. Na boiche. Work be.
Yeah, na kan.
Shop me yake Uber market.
But over the tenibiani mi yo ten ye jano concerning wele homework na kan bi efe.
Jala le bia le chake to mo fe se. Egbe shikula shi. Oba mo me na kan manage le na kan feel free. Chake.
Yeah. So what she's saying is that they are just managing as it is. Nothing so much has changed. But I want to ask you whether prices are increasing. What used to be the price of where you used to buy your wele or your car hide, and then what is the current price now?
Bianele market ni bijlawa. Nke bono kon mala ka. Bianele ni bijlawa serious. Come on compare last year, 2 years time back. This time ni be tough.
So she's comparing a year or two ago to the current price. No me enyenye hole, enyenye hiole.
No me chokome enyenye chokome tomo 50 Ghana, 70 Ghana. Biane wele chokome 5 million. 5 million old currency me
500 Ghana.
Chokome.
And if you say chokome, what do you mean? 1 arm. Okay, so about 1 meter or 2.
Like 2 meter. 5 million.
5 million.
10 million.
And 2 years ago, it used to be how much?
70 Ghana. Leba on 1.8. Biantono como son na Kenya. Wajenu. Biane kanga pipe no ya for no clemper ko me 350 pesos. We can go. Rubber. Ola no ba ona en customer ba e ko na pack ni package le fine. Fine. First one will 2 cedi, 3 cedi, 1 cedi. Yeah, na for 2 cedi. Even watch it in po me one will 3 cedi, 5 cedi.
So enyo on hole.
In 15 cedi, 30.
No, to who can explain how me feel?
Ke 30 Ghana.
So this one goes for 30 Ghana?
Be 10 cedi.
10 cedi.
In 5 cedi.
Wow. And 2 years ago, how much would they have?
No me can 10 cedi ne, no me 5 cedi. Me 5 cedi no me 3 cedi. Me 30 no me 10 cedi.
What's FM 92.7.
From the last 2 years, mini chaki more neighbor me. What type of changes have you seen? Your prices, customer patronage, can it be a fair antipath?
2 years July AM law for last year. This year eating wa ejakashin yele boni wa hele last year. Boni wa hele last year. This year difference by me. I feel noni wa he last year. Wa he ne tomo makola like 30 million.
So what we have currently at 30 million, cook at 30 million.
100 tubers.
So for 100 tubers,
3,000. 3,000.
So for 100 tubers of yam. So for example, this yam you're seeing currently, you get 100 tubers for 3,000 Ghana cedis. Oh, okay.
Ghana cedis. Ne ekome ya bibi. Ekome umba akpoto. Ewa koke ba body bo umba hon. Dano ba na ka 3,000. Sano calculate no kwe. She last year ene what nya wonale 2,500.
2 years ago.
3 FM 92.7 Urban Lifestyle Radio Station.
Let me go there.
Acho mi na Jasaki.
Jasaki. Ofane papam fruits ne ingbenye nyenai.
Akajo kusena kebahawo. Akajo Cape Coast.
Cape Coast Jamaica. Okay, so these ones are sourced from Cape Coast. No, I know that locally here, this one will be, is it margarine can? I don't know whether it's half. This is energy half. This is
half. Eno lunka, nene half.
So this is olunka. This is half. You should.
Sunrise on 3FM. Shine with us. 3FM 92.7 Urban Lifestyle Radio Station.